How's it going, everybody? My name is Azabiel, and I am the Guild Master of the Guild of Legends, located in the heart of the multiverse. And tonight, we are continuing our inability to stream the video game Stranded Deep because I realized that when I put up my schedule, that this playtest material had come out not too long ago, and I want to keep on it. I want to make sure to keep these reviews and discussions going as whenever I'm able and whenever they come out. So we're kicking Stranded Deep off the schedule once more, and in its place, we are doing a review of the Cleric and Revised Species playtest document for One D&D. Now, anyone who hasn't seen my previous playtest reviews, effectively what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. I haven't looked at this before. I've heard some elements of people talking about it, so I'll probably bring those up as they're relevant. But I haven't gone through this document myself, and there are elements of these documents that are brought back from the from the previous documents. I believe when something is new or changed, they have some means of making it clear. But otherwise, we're just going to go through, and if I see something that seems familiar, seems like I've looked at it already, like it was from one of the previous playtests, and it hasn't changed, I'll just skip over it. I'm not going to be going through every little minute detail of everything, but we are going to go through the bulk of this document and see what's going on. I am very interested in this one because the previous one they did it was a full expert classes document that goes through the three classes that are the expert classes, the Bard, Ranger, and Rogue. It didn't include any races or species or heritage or whatever terminology you want to use to discuss that sort of thing. It seems like in this document, at least, they're using the term species. I have heard people talking about their use of that terminology and how out of place it feels in fantasy, but that's beside the point. But yeah, they have the cleric here, and in place of other classes to go with the what was it? I believe the priest. The priest group of classes. Instead, they are adding in three revised species: the Ardling, Dragonborn, and Goliath. I believe at least the Ardling was included in the first document. I think Dragonborn was there as well. I don't remember seeing Goliath, but I'm guessing this is, since they had the first playtest, there's been some time, enough time to put it in people's hands and get review feedback from people, and now they're refining these things. Presumably Ardling and Dragonborn and Goliath, if it was in the first one, were the ones that needed the most care after the fact. So I'm guessing that's why they're here. If the Goliath was in the first document, and I just forgot about it, that's my bad. Actually, just out of curiosity, let's bring up the character origins and jump to let's see, we've got the Ardling there, we've got the Dragonborn, Dwarf, Elf, Human was up there, Gnome, Halfling, Orc, Tiefling. Yep, no Goliath. Okay, so the Goliath is entirely new for 1D&D. Obviously, it's been in 5e, but hasn't been done in these playtests. But the first thing we're going to hit almost certainly is going to be this cleric class. They do a pretty decent job here at breaking down and ordering the things to see what you're going to see and when you're going to see it. So the cleric class comes first, then the species, then the rules glossary, which is always an interesting section to check out, even though a lot of it is stuff we've seen already. And a lot of this text, it's same stuff that they throw in all of the playtest materials. Um, but let's see here. I haven't actually really looked at this too much. Um, Interestingly, 48 subclasses. I think there's what in the player's handbook. There's I think what 12 classes or something like that. So if you break that down, uh, it's a couple to a few per class, um, depending on if they are evenly spread out or more like they were um, in the original in the 5e player's handbook and everything, where like wizards got like 8 or something different subclasses, and then other classes only got 2 or 3. If they do a more even spread, I think that'll be great. Doesn't feel like there's so much care given to specific classes over others. Let's see. New and revised spells, feats, weapon options for certain classes. New system for creating a home base for your characters. I would really look forward to that, because that kind of content, having a stronghold or a home, is something that I always really enjoy in my tabletop games. So I'll be interested in seeing that when it eventually does show up in the playtest, if it ever does show up in the playtest. I would imagine it would. They've got a lot of time still. And, they've already done, at this point, 4 of the classes, which are going to be the bulk, almost certainly, of what they have to throw out in the playtest. I'm also really interested in seeing new and revised monsters, because having played 5e for a while and seeing what is put out in the official document, in the official published resources, books that they've put out and things like that, over time you've seen some shift in the way that they do these monster designs, the stat blocks and everything, and what these creatures are capable of. But also looking at third party things and other systems, you see a little bit about what they could be doing with these monsters that they're not doing, or that they hadn't been doing but they're maybe starting to do. And so I'm really interested in seeing that, especially with how there is a lot changing up with One D&D. I would be interested to see how that is reflected in the stat block design as well. Here's the class groups. You got 12 classes, 3 in each group. Right now we're only seeing the cleric out of the priest group. With the experts, we knew that they all had the expertise feature. Now, I think I saw some discussion that it seemed like the priests probably weren't going to have a single feature that everyone has. But if we look at the mages and the priests, we see the highlighted section is arcane for the mages and divine or primal for the priests, similar to how experts get the expertise highlighted. That's not a sure thing to go by any means, considering the warriors don't have anything highlighted, just saying that they hurt people a lot. But it is possibly a hint of how it goes. Maybe the cleric, druid, and paladin won't have a single feature that they share, but instead what they share is that they are powered by divine or primal magic. What I hope is the fact that they're divine or primal. If you think about it, you would think, well, clerics and paladins are going to be divine, druids are going to be primal, but I hope they mix it up as well. Have like maybe a warden type subclass for the paladin that focuses on primal magic. What did they call it? Like the cleric, the domain of the ancients or something that is more tied to like the natural world that might use primal magic. That would be interesting, as opposed to them all being, these are just divine, this is just primal, because at that point the druid is the odd one out. It doesn't feel like it belongs if this is the connecting factor. Similarly, it'd be interesting to see druids that have access to divine magic. Maybe a druid that is their circle draws power from upper planes or something like that, something more celestial in nature as opposed to the world around them, but then they still have the core features of what makes them a druid, like wild shape and stuff like that. I'm certain we're not going to see much for that because I think with the experts, they gave a single subclass for each, basically enough to give you something to test it with, rather than having multiple subclasses. So I'm guessing the cleric will probably also just have a single subclass in this one. So we're probably not going to see anything too crazy with it. Probably going to see your typical healer type archetype, or like the light domain where they were just burning everything with holy fire, stuff like that. Maybe we'll see that out of the cleric this time, or war priest. Those are kind of, I think, the archetypal, in fact, I think those were the primary subclasses that launched with the player's handbook, if I'm not remembering incorrectly. But again, we'll see. Let's see here. All right. So we're getting into the cleric here. They are with the priest class group. As we saw above, their primary ability is wisdom, as it has always been. We've got some kind of like lore and stuff explaining kind of what it means to be a cleric, what clerics do, all that stuff. Good for someone who's new to the class, new to the game system. Not so much something that you would need on a regular basis. If you're already familiar with the class and everything. Creating cleric, they highlight armor training, so I still think it's strange that they do armor training, like they made terminology for armor specifically separate from weapons, even though functionally it seems to work mostly the same. Like I'm curious to see why armor is separated, because I haven't seen anything in the document so far that seems to make a very clear point as to why that would be separated. So just looking at the table here, obviously they're going to be a full caster still. The breakdown of spell slots seems to be the same as it always was. Of course, they're almost certainly tied into that same situation that we saw with the Bard in the previous playtest document, where they can only prepare as many spells as they have spell slots, as opposed to having a set amount of spells that they would be able to prepare based on, I think, it's based on their wisdom normally, and maybe their proficiency bonus. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've messed with clerics or anything like that. But yeah, they had the system with the Bard, at least, where if you have 2 first level slots at first level, you can only prepare 2 spells, which feels very limiting, as opposed to being able to do 3 or 4 spells and have some options when you go into combat. They get their channel divinity right away. Makes sense. That is a very core feature of the cleric. And they get their spell casting. Their holy order, I thought for a moment that was going to be how they refer to the subclass, but I see at 3rd level they get their subclass. Holy order sounds like something entirely new, so we'll have to check that out. 5th level they get something called Smite Undead, which I'm going to guess, without going into it yet, I'm going to guess it's some sort of take on Turn Undead. Maybe Smite Undead is going to be the new name for how what that feature would be, and then it's going to be made either to work differently entirely, or maybe there's going to be options, possibly based on your subclass and stuff, that would let you smite undead in different ways, as opposed to just the normal You can turn undead, and at a certain level, you can destroy undead if they are of a certain challenge rating or lower. You get your subclass features kind of spread throughout. Blessed Strikes. I recall Blessed Strikes being a thing. That might have been from... Yeah, that was an optional feature. I think from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which it seems like maybe they are taking some element of that feature and making it a core class feature now. Of course, you get your feats spread throughout. Holy Order shows up again at 9th level. So I'm really interested in seeing what that is. I'm guessing it's something where you get options, and then later on you get another option. Similar to when you get Expertise, you would be able to then, at later levels, pick another feature to get Expertise with. Divine Intervention comes in at 11th level. I'm really interested to see if that's changed, because the way Divine Intervention works in 5e is very interpretive. It's very loose. It doesn't give you any static benefits. It is entirely up to the DM to determine what it does if it's successful. And of course, it is very unlikely to actually be successful until at a certain point when it becomes guaranteed. Then at 18th level, we see Greater Divine Intervention. I'm guessing similar to what you would normally have at 20th level, that becomes a guarantee. And then you get your feat and Epic Boon at 19th and 20th level. The spell slot breakdown seems to be roughly the same, and I would bet if I look at the normal table for clerics in 5e, the cantrip breakdown would shake out about the same as well. So we're not going to bother with bringing that up or looking at it too much. Now this is something interesting. In stock 5e, in the original release of 5e, a lot of the time your class would give you, with the exception of certain classes, it would usually give you two choices from a list, similar to what you have here. I completely missed this or. So effectively, they give you the option to pick two from the list, but then you have the recommended ones, the ones that thematically fit very well with a cleric. I see what they're doing here. They actually mentioned that, I think, earlier on in the document, that if you're going to have options, they give you the recommended ones. I thought it would show up differently. I just completely misread that. No tools, of course, and simple weapons. And then for armor training, light, medium, and shields, same as they always were, unless you picked certain subclasses, in which case you might get heavy armor and martial weapons. I bet unless we see a war cleric subclass, we're not going to see any difference to the armor training, though. Starting equipment. It's interesting, it marks out a priest's pack. I believe they had something along those lines in stock 5e. Yeah, they had a priest pack in 5e, so I'm curious to see why this is different. I wonder if it's maybe because it includes tools and they have changes to how tools work. But without giving you proficiency, it would be weird if they included tools in the pack. So we'll see. We'll look at the priest pack at some point in this document, I'm sure. So, right at first level, get your core feature as a cleric, Channel Divinity. You get the ability to call on this divine energy and use it to do one of a couple effects. Divine Spark, Turn Undead. Okay, so we still have our Turn Undead. So Smite Undead, I'm really curious about, because that sounds like it could end up being a take on the Paladin's Divine Smite. But for a cleric, it seems weird to make them more like the Paladin. I've always been of the mindset that uh, the cleric at its base should be further than from the paladin than it already is. Um, I'm sure part of this is informed by um, years of playing MMOs that have like light armor or no armor characters, that would wear robes or whatever vestments or cloth armor in some cases, and they would be a more I guess you would use the terminology squishy to describe them. They're not tanky characters. They're not really melee focused at all, but instead they are casters of a divine nature, um, which would put them very similar feeling to wizards and sorcerers and such. So maybe that's the reason that they do keep kind of the classic identity to the cleric. Also, the uh, the legacy of what a cleric has been in D&D, I believe is probably, at least for a long time, has been the like chainmail and mace and shield, that kind of a thing. But I feel like increasing the gap between cleric and paladin feels better to me. That's what I like about some other tabletop RPGs. Like the one that comes to mind is Pathfinder Second Edition. I'm sure Pathfinder First Edition has so many options. I'm sure there's something like it, but I'm familiar with Second Edition, where when you make a cleric, you can effectively choose if you want to be that kind of like no armor, squishy caster type divine caster, or if you want to be a more heavily armored, like war cleric type divine caster. Um, but I do think that being a full caster and stuff does still make them feel unique enough. It's just, especially when you get things like the War Cleric subclass, or I think Tempest Cleric can also do heavy armor and stuff like that. When you start seeing the clerics rolling up in plate armor and playing tank, but also full caster for the party, it feels a little strange. And I have no problem with heavily armored casters. I've always wanted to do a character with the archetype of being like a wizard or something that rolls around in heavy armor. Partially inspired by games like Dragon Age. After Dragon Age 2, they really started throwing around armor elements and weapon pieces onto their mages and stuff, and so I was always interested in kind of following through and making a character that played like that in D&D. But anyway, we were looking at the channel divinity. You get number of uses equal to your proficiency bonus. You gain them all on a long rest. I feel like this proficiency bonus thing, I've seen people complain about it, saying it's overused. I think it's really smart. I think it is the best way to do it. Sure, it might make a 1-level dip into a class more potent than it would be in stock 5e, but also I feel like multi-classing in 5e feels pretty terrible anyway. I don't think it's well done. I still feel like there's use to it, and I do like doing characters occasionally that are multi-classed, but I don't like how it's handled in 5e. And I'm sure One D&D will maintain the same issues that I have with it, but it seems like they are lessening it to some extent by doing stuff like tying class features to the proficiency bonus, so you can still feel like your secondary, tertiary, whatever classes are progressing, even if you're not taking full levels in them. Those elements of your character are still potentially becoming more useful or becoming more frequent, as opposed to being just like, if I multi-classed into a barbarian for 1 level, I would get 2 uses of rage that last for a round unless I attack. That's going to be at low level. That's great. I have a little dip for the first 5 levels or so, first 10 levels or so. Having those 2 rages, that very limited feature, still feels fine, doesn't feel bad. But as you get into the higher levels, the between 5 and 10 and beyond, it starts to really become apparent that you're not, that aspect of your character isn't keeping up, which would then, perhaps inspire you to take more levels in that class. But that means also diminishing aspects of other classes you might want to take. Obviously, unless you're doing like a gestalt, I don't know how you say that word. Unless you're doing something like that, you're not going to get the full power of all your classes. But multi-classing, I feel like I've seen work better than it does in 5e. And this is a step in the right direction for that. Now, use your spell save DC for your Channel Divinity saving throws. First feature is Divine Spark. I mean, we're already a half hour in almost, and I've barely started this class, so we're gonna try to not get off on tangents so much. As a magic action, you point with a holy symbol at another creature you can see within 30 feet of yourself, and focus divine energy at them. Roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus. Again, time the feature to your proficiency bonus. So if you have this feature multi-classed, it'll feel like it is progressing with you. It'll feel like your character is getting stronger in all aspects, as opposed to just the one that they are focusing on. Add the rolls together. You restore hit points to the creature equal to that total, or force the creature to make Constitution saving throw on a failed save, taking radiant damage equal to the total. So one of your channel divinities is sort of a heal harm type ability. You can choose to roll these d8s and heal someone with it, or you can choose to make them roll a Constitution saving throw and take damage. That is pretty cool. I really like that. I am curious. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure in the normal class in 5e, you only got Turn Undead, and then you would get another one based on your subclass. I think having Divine Spark here, whether you're a healer or a war cleric or anything else, this is going to be incredibly useful. It does lean into the aspect that the expectation that the cleric is a healer, I think, but also on the other side, they're not just a healer. They can also hurt people with this. And then, of course, you've got Turn Undead. Each undead within 30 feet of you must make a wisdom saving throw. If the creature fails its saving throw, it is dazed for 1 minute or until it takes any damage, or you are incapacitated or die. While dazed in this way, the only action the creature can take is the dash action, and if it moves, it must end that move further from you than where it started. So it doesn't have to flee like it would previously with Turn Undead in stock 5e, but if it does, it has to end up further away from you. It doesn't have to run its full speed away from you. It doesn't have to fully dash away from you, but it has to end up further from where it started. So it keeps that aspect of kind of the core identity of what Turn Undead does, but it isn't such a massive detriment, right? They can stay on the field. They can't attack or anything, but they can stay on the field. They can stay potentially a threat. Whereas I've seen a lot of uses of Turn Undead in 5e where, because this thing is forced to run away, has literally no other option. It cannot choose to stay still, has to flee. By the time, a fight is otherwise over, all the other assailants are dealt with, or, you just get a few turns in, those things are already well past most spell ranges, and they're not coming back for a minute. They will run, say their speed is 30 feet. If they take that, every round for a minute, they're going to run 300 feet away. And I think the only thing I can think of off the top of my head as like an attack spell that you could hit with that would be like a long range spell with Spell Sniper. Possibly could maybe reach that. I can't think of any that would still. Alternatively, you've got Eldritch Blast with a particular invocation that would give you a 300-foot attack range. And at that point, you can make, one attack, or as many attacks as you have Eldritch Blast beams, rather, against those fleeing targets. But in a lot of cases, if they get that far gone, they might as well be out of the fight. And so what it becomes is you've got Turn Undead that at level 1 can clear out an entire fight, can clear out most of a fight, can basically almost, not exactly, but almost feels like a one-hit kill on many enemies if you're fighting undead. So, the fact that it makes them dazed, and as opposed to this kind of specific to this feature condition that wasn't an actual condition but played like a condition, instead of being turned, they're dazed, and instead of having to move, they can stay put. But if they do move, they have to be further away, so it keeps that identity. I think this is a brilliant take on it. I don't recall off the top of my head what dazed does. Why don't we look that up real quick, if this will pull it up. This is always incredibly slow. So while dazed, you experience the following effects. Limited activity. You can move or take one action on your turn, not both, but you also can't take a bonus action or a reaction. So it limits it to just an action or a move. No bonus action, no reaction. Can't do both of those things. On top of that, the only action the creature can take is the dash action. So it removes it as an active combatant, but keeps it in the fight. This is an upgrade. I don't see how you could look at this and not see it as an upgrade. Unless you look at it, I guess, from the idea that it's getting weaker. But I think it needed that. It is my personal opinion that it needed that. Moving forward, your class can prepare spells. Any spell you prepare for the class must be a divine spell. Seems like it's keeping the identity that you have access to the full range of divine spells, but you do still have to prepare them. When you finish a long rest, you can replace any spell you have prepared with another divine spell of the same level. At higher levels, you can prepare more spells. The numbers there determine the number of different spells you can prepare of each level. For example, as a 4th level cleric, you can prepare 4 different 0 level spells, 4 different 1st level spells, and 3 different 2nd level spells. I still feel like this is a downgrade. I feel like the way that you determine how many spells you can prepare or how many spells you learn and stuff like that was fine. I'm curious to see something like the sorcerer. I mean, I guess we already kind of saw it with the bard, because the bard would learn spells permanently. But did they still have to prepare them, or do they only learn those many spells? Let's look at the bard spell casting. Okay, so look at it this way: the bard now plays more like a cleric. Instead of learning spells and having them permanently in their roster, they just prepare any arcane spell within their class-based restrictions. This isn't about the bard though. That's something I completely forgot about from last time. So I'm really curious to see the sorcerer and see if the sorcerer keeps the way that they have their spells, or if they now are going to prepare spells as well. I feel like that would be a strange change, but having sorcerer be the odd one out also would feel kind of weird, unless that was kind of the core aspect of the sorcerer, which it's not, because that's what meta magic should be. Um, but if it is a core aspect of the sorcerer, there might be something there. But I feel like it is weird to break it up and have that be a unique trait of the sorcerer. So I'm curious to see that when they eventually get to the mages and put out the playtest for the sorcerer. Again, I just don't like the way that they're doing prepared being tied to the spell slots, and it feels like it's easy to understand once you realize what they're doing, but it limits your options as a caster, which may be part of trying to lessen the gap between the martial caster disparity that people are always talking about. It might be working to that end, in which case I can understand it from that angle, but it doesn't feel like a great solution. Because as say a bard, as I'm playing a bard currently in a D&D game, I might feel better having a few options where I have my healing spells. I have cure wounds. I have healing word, but I've also got a couple of other spells to support my team in other ways that isn't just healing. But if I can only prepare 2 spells, I can't have those options, then I'm gonna feel like maybe I have to forego one, or either forego one of these healing spells or forego some of this other support options in order to meet that criteria, and that doesn't feel as good to me. Wisdom is spellcasting ability, of course. Use a holy symbol as a spellcasting focus for the spells you prepare for this class. I feel like they should have kept all of the spellcasting foci. I don't like saying that. I feel like they should have kept them all as arcane focus, primal focus, divine focus. But instead they have arcane focus, primal focus, and holy symbol, which it makes sense. That's what it is. But why have, the unique terminology for this thing? I don't think everything needs to become uniform and, alike. But I feel like there's certain aspects that should, because your spellcasting focus, you can always reflavor that into being whatever you want. It just feels weird having holy symbol be the name of the item compared to the other two, which are uniform. All right, here's what we're looking for. Holy Order. You have dedicated yourself to one of the following sacred roles, either on your own or as part of a religious order. Choose one of the following options. Protector, trained for battle, you gain martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor training. So this is no longer tied to your subclass. I think that's brilliant, first of all. I don't think it should be tied to the subclass. This suggests there's probably... I'm not going to say probably. There might not be a war cleric subclass then. Because one of the big aspects was you get these features, and then you get some stuff that also makes you more melee focused and stuff like that. But it'd be interesting to see if they kind of spread some of the war cleric into the core class to where they could have more of a variety, especially with them doing the Holy Order. Especially with them doing the Holy Order, making it to where you can play those archetypes with different subclasses. Following that, we've got the Scholar. Studying and teaching about lore of the gods and the multiverse. You gain proficiency in 2 of the following skills of your choice. All Arcana, History, Nature, Persuasion, and Religion. Whenever you make an ability check using either skill, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your Wisdom modifier. So they get a very unique bonus to the 2 skills that they choose when they pick Scholar. That's cool. That can make them feel much more specialized in that field, as opposed to like seeing a bard, because bards are jack of all trades. And if a bard happens to have a decent intelligence, they could easily be outclassing the cleric, who should be the master of religion. Here, if they're a scholar, then they can get, their intelligence bonus in addition to their wisdom bonus on top of their proficiency bonus, all for their religion skills, which will put them squarely for any of these skills into a level of mastery that most characters aren't going to get. Really only going to be countered by expertise, which of course a bard could still do if they have expertise in, whatever skill. They might see a bard that takes expertise in religion and they're outclassing the cleric all the time, but this will help level the playing field for a scholarly cleric. Then you've got the Thaumaturge. Delving deeper into your divine magical abilities, you can prepare one extra 0-level spell from the divine spell list to get an extra cantrip. See your spellcasting feature for more information on preparing spells. In addition, you regain one expended use of your channel divinity whenever you finish your short rest. So if you want to focus more on your magical abilities, you do Thaumaturge. If you want to focus more on your martial capability, you pick Protector. If you want to focus more on your skills and your knowledge, you pick Scholar. That's incredible. I love the Holy Order. That is very similar to how Pathfinder 2nd Edition separates the, introduces like the martial capabilities or the caster capabilities to the cleric. They give a feature just like this, with the exception that this one includes a kind of skill junkie type feature, as opposed to just their magic and martial capabilities. I love this. This is a great feature. Holy Order, top tier. Now, I do wonder if maybe Holy Order is the priest's class feature. The class group feature is maybe Holy Order. That wouldn't exactly make sense if a paladin automatically gets access to heavy armor training and martial weapons. But it would be interesting. They would also have to change Thaumaturge to fit maybe, for the paladin, maybe they get an extra something. I don't know. Who knows what the similar thing would be, unless they, made Smite work similar to Channel Divinity, where you have a certain amount of uses as opposed to using your spell slots. I think that would be a great change, by the way. And then for the Druid, it could be for their wild shape. And then for any of them, you could still do the extra 0-level spell from the divine spell list. If paladins don't already have cantrips, then maybe they get one through doing this. For druids and clerics, they just get an extra one. The list of skills could be either the same or slightly tweaked depending on the class. So the only thing that really doesn't fit would be the Protector for the Paladin, because I don't know how you would change this to keep kind of the identity of that feature for a class that already has what this would be. So maybe Holy Order isn't a class group feature, but it'd be interesting to see if maybe, just maybe, it was. I don't know. Third level, you get your subclass, of course. I want to go to the experts real quick. I want to just look at their things here. Bard subclass at 3rd level. Ranger subclass at 3rd level. Rogue subclass at 3rd level. I want them to keep that trend. I don't like... obviously... I understand putting the subclass at 3rd level because it adds more complexity to your character, and especially if you're a new player to the game, being front-loaded with that much stuff can be very daunting. And also for doing a 1-level dip into a class, immediately getting that much stuff right out the gate makes a 1-level dip incredibly potent if you have the subclass at 1st level for everyone. So if they just moved all the subclasses to 3rd level, I think that would be great. I don't know how they would justify that for warlocks and sorcerers, and stuff like that, where your subclass is an inherently core identity, core part of the identity of the character from day one. Um, with the sorcerer, I could see is the oddities of your bloodline haven't fully manifested to that level until you reach level 3. Maybe for the warlock, you're basically on a trial, a 3-level trial with your patron, whatever they may be, and then at 3rd level you lock it in. There's ways to make it work. I think it could be justified across the board. So I think this is good. If they stick to that trend, I think if they're doing it on every class so far, they should do it on every class moving forward. I don't like the disparity between where you get feats and where you get your subclass and where you get your subclass features and stuff like that. Having some things flipped around for like when you get subclass features as opposed to core class features, like that's fine. But like the fighter and the rogue getting a bunch more feats than everyone else, or not a bunch more, 1 or 2 more. It feels really janky, and then you have to figure out how to shuffle this around to where they're not getting like a feat and then the next level also getting a feat. Keeping those things level for all or uniform for all classes, I think is great. Subclasses, I think keeping that uniform would be great. So hopefully that is the case moving forward. Actually, while we've got this up, 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. Let's just look at the cleric for comparison. 4, 8, 12, 16, 19. Rogue was one of the ones that it was rogue and fighter that got more feats, unless I'm missing someone here, but I think that's all of them. Yeah, I think that's brilliant, especially with how they're trying to give more importance to feats in One D&D. I think having a more level playing field makes a lot of sense. I don't think feats are the way to breach that disparity, and only doing it on the rogue and the fighter doesn't work to that end anyway. So, all right, 5th level, Smite Undead. You can cause your Turn Undead feature to smite the undead. Whenever you use Turn Undead, you roll a number of d8s equal to your proficiency bonus and add the rolls together. Each undead that fails its saving throw takes radiant damage equal to the rolls total. That is a huge upgrade from Destroy Undead, I think, because chances are low level undead will probably be destroyed by this anyway. At 5th level, you've got 3? So that's 3d8s, unless you roll poorly. Low level undead are going to be wiped out by that. But also, it's still useful against higher level undead because it's an amount of damage that you get to deal to any undead that fail their saving throw. That's great. That is an upgrade. 6th level, get a subclass feature. 7th level, Blessed Strikes. I'm going to bring up on my other screen here. I'm going to bring up the... Oh, I have minimized everything. That is not what I wanted to do. I want to compare this to the optional feature version of that feature to see if it is changed. So, Blessed Strikes in Tasha's was an 8th level feature. Here it's a 7th level feature. It replaced other features. You would choose to take Blessed Strikes instead of something else. So let's look at what it does here. When a creature takes damage from one of your 0 level spells or your attacks with weapons, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to that creature. Once you deal this damage, you can't use this feature again until the start of your next turn. So they sort of get it's like a little mini smite that they can apply to their cantrips as well, their 0 level spells. The original version of this is when a creature takes damage from your cantrips or weapon attacks, you can also deal 1d8 radiant damage to that creature once per turn. So they've kept this feature entirely the same. Just changed the wording to 0 level spells to be in line with how they're wording things more particularly in One D&D. And I think Blessed Strikes is a good feature. I feel like it works really well. And whether you are melee focused or you are spell focused, it helps you either way. Cookie in the chat. Hi. How's it going? I don't know if you're just jumping in, but we're doing a little review and discussion of the latest playtest material for One D&D, the upcoming big project for Dungeons and Dragons. Set to be published, I think, 2024. I don't recall specifically, but you know, it's what they're working towards. Kind of some people I see referring to it as 6th edition. You could look at it that way. But that's not how they really talk about it. Don't really know anything about Dungeons and Dragons. Well, no worries. This is going to be a lot of D&D talk, so if you're not familiar, it might be, entirely foreign to you. But if you've ever thought about Dungeons and Dragons, I would highly recommend it. It's how I make a living, and it's also my greatest hobby. So it is my biggest time sink in my life at this point, and it's a lot of fun. Don't really game yet. All right, no worries. But yeah, let's get back into this. 2 a.m. Still haven't done your homework. Made it stream, so always appreciate having people joining in on the stream. So that's certainly appreciated. But make sure you're taking care of yourself and what you need to get done. So yeah, getting back into this 8th level, you get a feat. 9th level, you get your Holy Order. So you get to pick a second option. If we go back here, so whether you chose Protector for those martial capabilities, Thaumaturge for those spell capabilities, or Scholar for those skill capabilities, you get to pick a second one. You'll never get all 3, I imagine, from what I remember from the table up here. I think it only shows up twice. But you do get 2 out of the 3. So, you can either go full combat, take Thaumaturge and Protector, be a heavily armored martial weapon wielding spellcaster, or you could be a scholarly spellcaster or a scholarly warrior. It's cool that they give you a second option. I feel like a lot of people might come into this, they pick their Holy Order, they only have one in mind, they pick that one, and then by the time they get a second one, it's like, an afterthought, not something that they ever considered. I could see that coming up a lot in people's character builds, but, having a little bit of extra potency in your character build is always nice. Even if it's not the main thing you're building towards. All right, skipping over level 10, subclass feature there. We'll get to know more about that when we look at these subclass. We get Divine Intervention at 11th level, calling on your deity or pantheon to intervene on your behalf when the need is great. As an action, describe the assistance you seek and roll percentile dice. If you roll a number equal to or lower than your cleric level, the divine power intervenes. The DM chooses the nature of the intervention. The effect of any divine spell is appropriate. If the intervention occurs, you can't use this feature again for 2d6 days. Otherwise, you can use it again after you finish a long rest. So it seems to mostly work how Divine Intervention always worked. But I like what they say here. The DM chooses the nature of the intervention. The effect of any divine spell is appropriate. So that gives some framework for a DM to go off of. The DM doesn't have to completely come up with what this feature does if it works. They can just say, oh, well, this spell would be similar to what you're asking for, so you get this spell effect, and be done with it. You don't have to rattle your brain and think too hard about it. They give you right out the gate an easy way out if a more custom feature isn't a better fit. And then, of course, if it works, you're limited 2d6 days between the next time you can use it again, or a long rest if it doesn't work. Another feat, another subclass feature, another feat, and then Greater Divine Intervention. At 18th level, when you use your Divine Intervention feature, it succeeds automatically, no roll required, and you can use it again after 2d4 days. So not only can you use it more frequently, but also it automatically succeeds when you do it. Of course, at 18th level, you're at the top of your game. You are one of the best clerics around, if not the most powerful. You're certainly up there. And then 19th level, you get another feat, and 20th level, you get an epic boon. Same as all classes at those levels. And then here they have kind of their recommended prepared spells for each level. Of course, this is great, again, if you're new to the class or just trying to build a character quickly to where you don't have to think too much about what spells you're taking. You just pick the ones on the list if you don't want to make those decisions. Interestingly, they highlight spiritual weapon, guidance, aid, banishment, and resistance. So I'm 10th level. 10th level cleric, not 10th level spells. Okay, I was like, wait a second, there's no 10th level spells. I was thrown off for a second there. Completely thrown for a loop. Took me a second to realize what I was looking at. Let's see if there's any other spells they highlight. No, there's not. So when we get to the end of the document, we're going to look at these spells. I'm sure they will be marked there as well to where they stand out a little bit. Actually, the rest of the spells probably won't show up in the document, just these ones. So I'm curious to compare those to the original versions and see how they stack up. Guidance, I believe, was in the expert one. Let's drop down here. Yeah, guidance was here, and I know I heard some people complaining about it from people who had playtested it, saying that the fact that you can only benefit from it once per long rest was too limiting, because oftentimes it would go wasted because they just wouldn't use the spell on the off chance that you'd need it for something more important later on. I think they did that originally as a means to limit people saying, oh, and I'm going to give him guidance every time someone tries to do a skill check. But they already limit that by making it a reaction instead of something you have to do in advance. Now it's when you see someone fail an ability check, you use your reaction to say, I'm going to give you guidance, see if you can succeed that check instead. So they kind of took it from two ends, and I think they were overdoing it. So I'm curious, with having seen that feedback, if that has changed. Of course, we're talking about that now, but we'll get back to that part once we get to the end of the document. Don't pick up too much, but I'm trying to listen. Sorry. No worries. Nothing to be sorry about, man. A lot of what I'm talking about is a lot of D&D jargon that won't make sense unless you play D&D, probably. So I wouldn't expect it to make sense if you're not familiar with the game. Moving into the subclass, we're going to get a subclass, and we're going to get the life domain. So this is going to focus on being a healing cleric. The life domain is the right here. It says clerics who tap into this domain are masters of healing, using that force of life to cure many hurts. So as soon as you get your subclass at 3rd level, you get your domain spells. Are you able to play D&D on stream? Absolutely. Actually, if you check out my YouTube, I have a very scuffed couple of VODs of a one-shot I did with some other VTuber friends, playing through a one-shot I put together on stream from, I think, a few months ago. I've been meaning to do more since then. I just haven't gotten around to it. Been busy working on things in the professional side of me running D&D games as a professional GM, as well as just streaming in general. So I've been kind of light on what been light on the D&D content I've wanted to bring to the stream. But moving forward in the new year, I'm looking to absolutely bring in more D&D content. I'm just gonna say it now. I might try to aim to do at least a one-shot every month, because I think that would be incredible. I think that would be a lot of fun. And we can bring in other VTuber friends, other collaborators and stuff like that to kind of spread my favorite thing in the world with my audience on stream. So yeah, if you ever want to take a look at some of the D&D that I have streamed, check out my VODs on YouTube, which you can find a link to that on my page on Twitch, I believe. And look for my playlist for the hunt for the jackdaw. Was it the hunt? Something about a jackdaw. That was the name of the one shot. You check it out there. There should be roughly 2 hour episodes. I think the second one went closer to 3 or 4 hours, which might be a bit much to sit through. But amid technical difficulties and things, there was a lot of scuff to it. But if you're interested, you can definitely check that out. We've got another spell that's highlighted here, Prayer of Healing. So once we get to the end of the document, we'll check out that spell as well to compare it to see how that's changed. But otherwise, Lesser Restoration, Mass Healing Word, Revivify, or of Life, Death Ward, Greater Restoration, Mass Cure Wounds. A whole bunch of healing spells and curative, restorative spells. Makes a lot of sense for the Cleric subclass that focuses on healing. Also at 3rd level, you get Disciple of Life. When a spell you cast with a spell slot restores hit points to a creature, that creature regains additional hit points on the turn you cast the spell. The additional hit points equal 2 plus the spell's level. So if you have like an ongoing healing spell, you'll only get that benefit once on the turn you cast it. But if it's something that heals them not on your turn, they're not going to get that benefit. Thorn Umbreon is following. Hey, how's it going? Good to see more people checking out the stream, more people following. If you're a fan of D&D, if you check out my VODs, you definitely won't see much of it, as we were just saying when I was responding to Cookie's question about streaming D&D. But again, moving forward in the new year, definitely planning to bring more D&D to the stream. Let's see here. But yeah, again, thank you for the follow. Thank you for stopping by. I appreciate it. Let me pull up the life domain here. So the original version of Disciple of Life says, whenever you use a spell of 1st level or higher to restore hit points to a creature, the creature regains additional hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level. So what they've done is they've just limited it to only getting the benefit on the turn you cast the spell. I don't know if that is for the best or not. I haven't, honestly, in my experience, seen a lot of life clerics, so I'm curious to see what people are saying about this one. Thorn Umbreon here. Is the playtest at least somewhat good or no? Generally, across the board, from what I've seen, I think there's a lot of good things that they're doing. There are some very strange things that they've done, some stuff that I don't like. But as I've been going through the Cleric, I've been mentioning things that I think are just straight up upgrades. I feel like their channel divinity, giving you divine spark, an option to use your channel divinity to heal or harm creatures, in addition to giving you turn undead. I feel like that's a straight up upgrade. Turn undead from the seat of the DM, I feel like is an upgrade. It still takes enemies out of the fight potentially, but it doesn't just send them forcefully fleeing. They can't move closer to you. They have to end up further away from you than where they started. So it keeps that identity of what it did. As a DM, I think this is an upgrade. They introduced Holy Order, which lets you pick if you want to have a martial focus, a skill focus, or a spellcasting focus. I think that's brilliant. I love features like that where you get choices to kind of determine the style of your character. Smite Undead, just ability to, instead of just destroying undead of a certain level or lower, you get to do damage to any undead that fail their saving throw. I think that's brilliant. Yeah, across the board, most of the stuff on the Cleric, I feel like, has been upgrades. So, from what I've seen in this particular document, it's looking pretty good to me. Looking at previous documents, the majority of the stuff, I feel like, has been upgrades. So if I were to say at least somewhat good, definitely at least somewhat good, I'd say it's pretty good. I'd even go as far as to say that. There are elements I really don't like, but it's still in the playtest. Still time for things to change. I don't think they've thrown out anything here. I don't think they've put out anything in the playtest that they can't go back on. I think there is room for them to take feedback and change things. There's nothing so extreme that it would be completely ruining them, that they can't change with feedback. So, yeah. So going back into this, with the Disciple of Life, again, I saw some people talking about this, the fact that it's only on your turn, but any extra healing is good. The fact that it is technically weaker than it used to be, I would need to see it in practice, I think, before I can fully judge how this change works. At the very least, as far as this feature goes, it doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look great, doesn't look terrible. It's a small change, I think. 6th level, they get Preserve Life. You can use your Channel Divinity to heal a group of the critically injured. As an action, you expend 1 use of your Channel Divinity and present your Holy Symbol, restoring a number of hit points equal to 5 times your Cleric level. Pretty potent heal to a group, basically any number of people that can fit within 30 feet of yourself, including yourself, dividing those points amongst the chosen creatures. I think that works pretty similarly to how it already worked. In fact, with exceptions to wording changes, this might be one-to-one the same. This feature can bring a creature's current hit points to no more than half its hit point maximum. Yeah, so the only thing that they seem to have left out here is that in the original version it said you can't use this feature on an undead or a construct. So with Preserve Life, presumably you can use this on undead and constructs, but that might come down to being just a quirk that people leave up to the DM and up to the table. If they feel like it doesn't make sense to be able to heal undead and heal constructs, just like with anything else in D&D, absolutely free to say, nah, that doesn't work here. Oh, I think I missed a message here. Can't put my timer off. Can't put your timer off. What do you mean by that? Like you can't turn off the timer? Moving on here. Blessed Healer. The healing spells you cast on others heal you as well. When you cast a spell with a spell slot on another creature that restores hit points to it, you regain hit points equal to 2 plus the spell's level on the turn you cast a spell. So it works very similar to Disciple of Life, just specifically bouncing it back at you. And 14th level, Supreme Healing. When you would normally roll 1 or more hit dice to restore hit points to a creature with a spell that you cast with a spell slot, don't roll those dice for the healing. Instead, use the highest possible number for each die. For example, instead of restoring 2d6 hit points to a creature with a spell, you restore 12. That's great. I think that's a good feature. I think that's also already how that worked. So not a ton of changes to the subclass. It really seems to be largely the very small adjustment to let's see, which one was it? The small adjustment to Disciple of Life, saying it has to be on the turn you cast the spell. Otherwise, this is pretty much the same. The domain spells are changed up a little bit, but in general, nothing too crazy going on. Put my timer on at first so I would not fall asleep, but it failed, so it doesn't matter if I needed to put it off. Otherwise, it will go off at 5 a.m. I see. All right. Moving on from that. That is all of the Cleric. And again, I think the Cleric is in pretty much across the board. I feel like the Cleric is better. On paper, it looks better. Now we're getting into character species. For this, I'm actually going to bring up the character origins document to kind of compare to the original versions of the of these character types that showed up in the original document. The Ardling, of course, kind of the new take on a celestial-based character. This one with more bestial traits, as opposed to being something like an Asamar, who is humanoid, for all intents and purposes, looks human, just more idyllic and, you know, celestial, angelic, whatever the case might be. I would be curious to see if they also include Asamar alongside the Ardlings. I think it would be a mistake to drop Asamar entirely. So I'm interested to see if they bring them back in a later playtest for One D&D alongside the Ardlings, because it doesn't hurt to have more celestial character options, and especially with how thematically different they seem to be. You know, I think that's pretty good. All right, so they're humanoid, medium or small, chosen when you select species. 30-foot speed, 200-year lifespan on an average. Now, one thing I saw people talking about was the fact that they're using species in place of, like, race to describe characters. For example, if you look at the original document here, you see it says when you select this race as opposed to when you select this species. I saw some people saying that the word species feels too sci-fi, too scientific, too, you know, too much in that direction. I feel like they already had a perfect word for it if they just kept the terminology for lineage. I think that gets the idea across very well. Other systems and other third-party things for 5e and otherwise have used words like heritage or ancestry to describe it as well, which I think also do the job really well. Species does feel very scientific, very, like, it doesn't feel fantasy when you use the term species. Obviously, you know, the word species does come up in fantasy content, but I think that I think they already had a perfect word to use, and they just threw it away for some reason. So I wouldn't be surprised with the kind of the vocal feedback I saw about it. I wouldn't be surprised if they changed it again. I understand why they're probably not looking to use the word race anymore, for the same reason that I imagine a lot of other publishers and developers and stuff are also not using the word race for this aspect of characters in their tabletop RPGs, but species isn't the right way to go. That's sort of the long and short of it in a very long and drawn out way. So, as an Ardling, you get an animal ancestry. You descended from a celestial animal. Choose one of the ancestry types below, then choose one of the example animals listed for that ancestry or a similar animal. You gain the benefits of that ancestry, and your head resembles the head of the chosen animal. So they have changed the wording on these to climber, flyer, racer, and swimmer from exalted, heavenly, and idyllic. Right? Like, yeah, here we go. So in this table here, they've got the suggested animals for those types and the benefits that they get for those traits as well. I'm going to shift this over here if I can. There we go. That'll be more useful. Here, it's more clear. You see the word climber, you think something that's got claws, something that can scale trees and other such things. Flyer, something with wings. Racer, something that's very quick. And swimmer, something that swims. Makes a lot more sense than exalted, heavenly, and idyllic, which were entirely based on their the planes that these creatures are from. I think they've taken, in addition to making it more clear what these are supposed to be, they're also taking a step away from it being tied to alignment. Since with 5e and onward, they've been distancing themselves from alignment. With 5e, they no longer had alignment play any clear mechanical effects on the game or your characters. And in later publications, they even stopped listing alignment on things. And then I think they kind of went back a little bit because people didn't like taking all that detail out, to where now they say, typically it is of these alignments. Typically they're this way or that, whatever. To make it more clear that not everything is cookie cutter. Not everything will fit into the same box as everything else of the same type, which I think, makes a lot of sense. And it makes it, I think it makes it easier for new DMs, new world builders to feel like they can take these creature types, like for example orcs or drow, and they can make them not evil monsters if they want. When you have every drow and every orc have the words evil listed on their stat blocks, it makes it feel like, oh well, they have to be evil. But making it clear that they don't have to be is always for the best. And I think that's what they are doing here, changing from these alignment plane based subtypes to animal based subtypes. So with the climber, you get a climb speed equal to your speed. That's pretty cool. Once per turn, when you deal damage with your unarmed strike to a target, you can increase the damage to that target by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. So effectively, you have these claws or something that can help you with climbing in this way. In the flyer, you have vestigial wings. When you fall at least 10 feet, you can use your action to safely glide downward, taking no damage from the fall. And when you take the jump action, you can flap your wings to gain advantage on that action's ability check. So they're not giving you flight, because a lot of people are terrified of first level flyers for some reason. They feel like it's the strongest thing in the game. I strongly disagree, but they're keeping, you still have these wings. You're still able to benefit from these wings. You just can't fully fly. I think that's a good compromise, because there's no way people would let this go out with full flying at level 1. Everyone would be like, oh, well, obviously everyone's going to play the Ardling Flyer because they can fly at level 1, blah, blah, blah. Again, pet peeve of mine. I feel like flying at level 1 is perfectly fine. It's not that strong. With the racer, when you take the dash action, your speed increases for that action, equal to 10 times your proficiency bonus. So at level 1, that increase is equal to 2 or 10 times 2, so 20. So you can go an extra 20 feet on top of whatever your normal speed would be, which would typically be 30, unless you have some sort of class feature that increases it or something, a feat maybe. But assuming 30, you move 30, then you dash for an extra 30 plus an extra 20 on top of that. You're moving pretty quick, and that only gets faster as you get higher level. I think that's really cool. Makes it to where the speed increases aren't restricted to just monks and people who take the mobile feat. It's there's some more options to do some cool speed increases, and it keeps that feeling of like a cheetah, right? A cheetah can run really quick in a short burst, which this feels like this is in line with, as opposed to like, I think people, like humans, are really good at like running for a long time as opposed to like a sudden burst. But we're getting off topic. Finally, you have the swimmer. You can hold your breath for up to an hour at a time, and you have a swim speed equal to your speed. In addition, you have resistance to cold damage. Holding your breath instead of just being fully amphibious, I think that's cool. Because it does give you some limitation to it, but it still gives you a leg up compared to your to most people. You have a swim speed equal to your movement speed, which just looking at the species, that's 30. And resistance to cold damage. If you think about it, if you're in the water all the time, if you're swimming in the ocean, that's not warm water. So if you have this, if you're a dolphin person, you're going to be used to being in that cold water. And then we've got divine magic. You can innately channel minor divine magic. The thaumaturgy spell, which is a cantrip, a 0 level spell. A nice little additional thing to throw on. And whenever you finish a long rest, you can replace that spell with a different 0 level spell from the divine spell list. So you don't have to just have thaumaturgy. You can trade it out for other divine 0 level spells. That's really cool. You can effectively prepare a different 0 level spell that you get from your species. Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma is your spellcasting ability for any spell you cast with this trait. So you can choose which of the spellcasting ability scores you want to use for it when you make your character. That's incredible. Then you get Keen Senses for proficiency with the Perception skill. So you're a little bit better at tracking, because animals tend to be very good at that stuff. Humans, modern comforts have made us less in line with the primal world. We don't have to constantly be on alert for predators or prey as much as animals tend to need to be. So they're good at perceiving things. That's cool. I like that. Thematically, it works really well. It's a very cool animal-based race, but it's also a celestial-based species, rather. I think that's a really cool design. So I just want to only quickly look at this. So this doesn't tell you anything about what you get here. Originally, they got angelic flight, so they could sprout wings and fly up to their speed as a bonus action. A number of times equal to their proficiency bonus per long rest. I bet people hated that. And it's even limited flight too. But it is still flight, and apparently in D&D, flight is the strongest thing in the world. It's really not. There are so many ways you can counter it. Calm down, people. You would also get some spell casting related to your legacy. We're not going to go through this whole thing, but you can see the different specific spells you would get based on your legacy. And resistance to radiant damage. Maybe they're moving away from giving resistances to species. Who's to say? I'm not sure. We'll only know as we go further along. All in all, I think the Ardling in this form looks really good. I think this is a great take on what they had. And honestly, it sounds more interesting than what it was originally. Like, thematically, it's still there, but the features feel better to me. Moving on to Dragonborn. Humanoid, only medium. It cannot be a small Dragonborn. That's what kobolds are for. Speed of 30 feet. Also, that's not actually what kobolds are for, but maybe that's the justification. I don't know. 80 years on average, pretty human-like lifespan for D&D species. You still get your draconic ancestry, of course. You are Dragonborn, you are descended from dragons, so of course you have to have your draconic ancestry. Your choice affects your breath weapon and damage resistance traits, so they are still keeping damage resistance in some cases, just not with the Ardling, I guess. Maybe they figured they give enough other stuff in here that the resistance was unnecessary. This is wild. Dragonborn still get a flight thing, but we'll get to that in a second. As you can see, you pick your ancestor, the type of dragon you were descended from. You get a damage type related to that dragon ancestry that ties into your breath weapon, which you can use when you take an attack action to breathe out some sort of energy, acid, lightning, fire, poison, or cold, depending on your choice here, in a 15-foot cone or a 30-foot line that is 5 feet wide. Each creature in that area makes a dexterity saving throw against a DC equal to 8 plus your con mod plus your proficiency bonus. They take damage, which scales as you level, which is very important. I would feel very bad if that didn't scale. And even on a successful save, they'd still take half as much damage. So it's a little bit better than cantrip damage usually tends to be, because it still scales like a cantrip, but it has half damage on a successful save, which cantrips in 5e do not. Maybe that's a difference with One D&D. Maybe they're going to start making it to where cantrips that, saving throw cantrips that succeed still do half damage. We'll see once we start seeing some of those cantrips in the playtest materials. You can use breath weapon equal to a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus once per long rest. You have damage resistance equal to the damage type related to your ancestor. Makes sense. If you can breathe it out, you can probably take it, You get dark vision to 60 feet. I feel like it's cool to see that dark vision isn't on the Ardling, but I feel like they're going to make the mistake that they made with a lot of 5e character choices where most characters have dark vision, which really is kind of boring. And it's led to me, whenever I make a character, making characters without dark vision, unless there's a particular reason I want to have dark vision. But in most cases, I will try to make characters that do not have dark vision specifically. And when you reach 5th level, you learn how to channel the magical energy of your draconic ancestry to give yourself temporary flight. As a bonus action, spectral wings that last for 10 minutes, or until you're incapacitated, or you retract the wings as a bonus action. During that time, you have fly speed equal to your speed. Your wings appear to be made of the energy used by your breath weapon. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So this is a more limited flight than the Ardlings would have gotten in the original version. So maybe that's why they still have it. In addition, they throw in the little flavor that it's made of the energy used by your breath weapon. So thematically, it works really cool with them as well. This is mostly the same. They've taken away the Draconic language, so Dragonborn don't instinctually know the Draconic language anymore. They still get the dark vision, still get the damage resistance, they still get the breath weapon. Effectively, they traded out the Draconic language for flight at 5th level, which is wild. It's cool, though. It sounds like a cool feature to have. Dragonborn look pretty good. I think people might actually use their breath weapon more than you usually see in stock 5e, because the 5e Dragonborn breath weapon isn't very good. But One D&D seems to have made it a little bit better, having a scale, giving you more uses of it, giving you a little bit more flexibility. The choice of cone or line isn't based on your type anymore. It's just you choose which one you want to do. Presumably whenever you use the breath weapon, so that's great. Like, you can, it's a little bit more flexible of a feature than it used to be, which is fantastic. Now moving on to Goliath. Goliath was not in the original character Origins, so this is a new species for the playtest. They're humanoids. They're medium. They stand a bit taller than humans do usually. A higher speed at 35 feet than most characters get, and lifespan of 80 years on average. They get giant ancestry, similar to the draconic ancestry. It looks like they pick a type of giant that they are descended from, and they get some benefits based on that. You can use the chosen benefit a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So the Cloud Giant ancestry gets a bonus action to teleport up to 30 feet to an unoccupied space. The Fire Giant can, when they hit a target with an attack roll and deal damage to it, you also deal 1d10 fire damage. So they can choose to do a little bit of a burning, like a Fire Giant smite type effect. That's really cool. Frost Giants have a similar thing with cold damage, but that also reduces the speed of the target by 10 feet. So it deals less damage, but it also slows them down because you're chilling them. That's really cool. The Hill Giant ancestry gets, when you hit a large or smaller creature with an attack roll and deal damage to it, you can knock that target prone. There is no save related to that. You just immediately knock them prone. That sounds really good. Stone Giant gets Stone's Endurance. When you take damage, you can use your reaction to roll a d12. Add your Constitution modifier to the number rolled and reduce the damage by that total. So they're a little bit harder to actually damage. And the Storm Giant, when you take damage from a creature within 60 feet of you, you can use your reaction to deal 1d8 thunder damage to that creature. So someone hits you, you blast them right back with some lightning. That's really cool. I love these. These sound really cool. And the fact that you get a specific ancestry based on the different types of giants for being Goliath instead of every Goliath being entirely the same, that's awesome. I love that. They also get large form. Starting at 5th level, you gain the ability to supernaturally grow. As a bonus action, you change your size to large, provided you're in a big enough space. This transformation lasts for 10 minutes or until you end it as a bonus action. During that duration, you have advantage on strength checks, and your speed increases by 10 feet. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. So again, they've got a bonus action feature where they can literally become larger. That's pretty cool. Similar to what Durgar can do, the deep dwarves, the gray dwarves, they can they've always had an ability where they can grow large. Now Goliaths can grow large because they're descended from giants. It makes a lot of sense for Goliaths. Doesn't really seem to make as much sense for Durgar, honestly, in my opinion. I don't know why dwarves get bigger. And finally, they have powerful build. You have advantage on any saving throw you make to end the grappled condition on yourself. So it's easier for you to break out of grapple, and you count as one size larger when determining your carrying capacity and the weight you can push, drag, or lift. I've always loved the powerful build for this aspect, just the idea that you can carry more than most people can carry just because you're so dense with muscle just inherently. But on top of that, getting the bonus to grapple, to breaking grapples is really good. So overall, I think the Ardling changed a lot for the better. I think the Giants look incredible, a huge upgrade from the 5e version. And I think Dragonborn look like an upgrade. The Draconic Flight sounds really cool, and the way that they've made the breath weapon, at least on paper, looks a lot more useful than it would be normally in 5e. That's great. That's upgrades. Now we're moving into feats. So let's see. A lot of this is stuff just describing how to read this and kind of describing how you can use feats. But ability score improvement, we've already seen. I don't imagine this has been changed at all. I mean, just looking at it, doesn't sound like it's changed at all. And I don't know why it would. Epic Boon of Fate requires 20th level. So it's an epic boon, so it's a 20th level feat. And then it's only for the major priest group, which this one is as well. And this one is just for the priest group. So Epic Boon of Fate. When another creature that you can see within 60 feet of you makes a d20 test, you can roll a d10 and apply the number rolled as a bonus or a penalty to the d20 roll. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you roll initiative or finish a short rest or a long rest. That's really cool. That's a fun boon. The fact that you can use it to benefit allies or to benefit a roll or be a detriment to a roll is really cool. It's not just one way or the other. That's cool. Being restricted to mage and priest group is interesting. I guess the idea is that you're naturally in tune with magic and things like that, as opposed to experts and warriors. So you have the means through your magic to kind of alter the weave of fate. Boon of Spell Recall. Again, major priest group, level 20. You can cast any spell you have prepared without expending a spell slot, provided the spell is 5th level or lower. Okay, so it's tempered a little bit. Once you do so, you can't use this benefit again until you finish a long rest. So once per long rest, getting a free spell of 5th level or lower, that's not bad. It's a feat, so anything that a feat is extra power. So keeping that in mind, that's a cool feature. It is restricted to 5th level or lower, so you can't do some of the really potent spells with it. But, I mean, there's still a lot of really good 5th level and lower spells that getting an extra free use out of would be really useful. Also, the fact that it's any spell. It doesn't have to be a spell that you know. It doesn't have to be a spell you have prepared. It doesn't even have to be a spell that your class can learn. It can be any spell. So not only is it a free use of a spell, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, it's not just a free use of a spell, it's a free use of a spell that you might not ever even be able to use normally. You could be, someone who could never cast Fireball. Maybe like, let's assume a cleric can't cast Fireball. With this boon, you could cast Fireball once if you needed to blow something up. That's cool. An Epic Boon of True Sight, only for the priest group. At 20th level, you have True Sight out to a range of 60 feet. That's a really long range for True Sight. I'm surprised that they didn't limit it to like 30 feet or something at most. But also limiting it just to the priest group is interesting. I think that might be kind of, if I were to recall something about D&D monsters, I think I recall more celestial creatures than anything else having True Sight, so that makes a little bit of sense. But also, it's a real shame for other characters that might want to have that kind of a feature. Now we're getting into the rules glossary. A lot of this stuff we're going to skip over because a lot of it we've seen before. We're just going to be keeping our eyes out for anything that is definitely new, anything that we definitely haven't seen before. And if there's something that anyone knows in this document is new that I skip over, go ahead and let me know, and we'll go back and take a look at it. Right off the bat, we're looking at the spells. There should only be like, I think, 6 or 7 spells to look at. So we will look at the spells, but like all the specific other rules, we're not gonna, like arcane spell. We already know that. We already know what that deals with from previous playtest read-throughs. If you want to see my thoughts on those things that we're gonna skip over, check out my VODs on YouTube to see my previous playtest reviews and discussions. So looking at aid, second level spell of the divine spell list. It's an action. It's 30 feet, has all of the components, including a tiny strip of white cloth for your material component, and it's instantaneous. Your spell bolsters creatures, filling them with resolve. Choose up to 6 creatures within range. Each target gains 5 temporary hit points. When you cast this spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, the number of temporary hit points increases by 5 for each spell level above 2nd. That sounds very familiar. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Aid on D&D Beyond and see what's different here. Oh, you know what? So they turned Aid into a temporary hit points feature instead of a maximum hit point increase. So the original version of Aid would last for 8 hours, and in those 8 hours, anyone that you hit with it would have their maximum hit points increased. The difference being that when you have temporary hit points, once you lose them, they're gone. It's extra on top of your normal hit points, but when you lose them, they're gone. When you have your maximum hit points increased, however, you can, if you lose those hit points, you can be healed still back up to that increased maximum. So they've kind of nerfed this spell a little bit by turning it into temporary hit points. There's more for it to compete with, since a lot of other things can give temporary hit points. In addition to that, you can't regain those hit points when you lose them. Otherwise, the amounts are the same. Oh, you know what? This can hit 6 creatures, whereas the original version could only hit 3 creatures. So this is good for a full party typically, whereas the older version you had to pick who you're helping. So it's buffed in how many people you can hit, nerfed in the fact that it's temporary hit points instead of a hit point maximum increase. Honestly, I think this is a fine change. I think that D&D characters in 5e have a lot going for them in regards to survivability, especially as they get higher in the levels. Especially if they have spell casting on their side for healing spells and things like that. I think it makes sense to nerf some aspects of it. You know, make it to where, not necessarily to make the game harder, but to increase, I guess what I want to say is to increase the challenge, but that is effectively making the game harder. But what I mean by that is that a lot of the times in 5e, just the way the rules are written and stuff, it can feel very easy. It can feel like there's not much risk to anything that's going on. So the DM needs to be kind of creative and really think things through when they're designing encounters to keep in mind what the player characters are capable of when to be able to introduce challenge, to keep the game interesting and prevent the game from feeling very bland and monotonous. So I think this is a small change, but I think it is one that works to that end of keeping the game more interesting. Let me check out chat for a second here. Cookie saying, I'm still here without brain cells. There's still 14 pages to read. That's, you know, I remember going through that kind of stuff. I am very glad I am done with that aspect of that stage of my life now. Whenever I need to read a lot of stuff, it's because I want to try a new D&D or a new D&D, a new tabletop RPG, or a new adventure. It's all stuff that I want to do as opposed to stuff that I have to do for, school or work responsibilities. So, I feel you, and we're rooting for you. You'll get those pages, man. Getting back into it here. So arcane spells, we're already kind of familiar. We're already familiar with spells. We're not going to look at the entire spell lists. That's a lot to go through, and a lot of it is stuff we've probably already seen. Armor training, artisan's tools, attack actions. We've already seen a lot of these. Here's another spell, banishment. I'll bring that up on D&D Beyond to reference as well. It is still a 4th level abjuration spell. It is arcane and divine spell lists. Casting time is an action still. Range 30 feet, down from 60 feet. Full materials still. And then duration is... We've got Maxime2518 is following. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate you coming by and supporting the stream. All right, let me bring up D&D Beyond again. I had to drop it down so I could see who was following there for a second. It is still concentration up to 1 minute. So far the big change is having the range of the spell, which I understand that. I feel like that perfectly makes sense. Banishment can be very potent, and having long range on something that is very potent only makes it more potent. So taming it down a little bit, I can understand that. Because it's one of those spells where if someone gets hit by it, and you're really good at protecting yourself, or your party's really good at protecting you, or you're just really lucky on your concentration rolls, that person is just out of the fight for 10 rounds at least. And, any amount of rounds can be enough to change, to completely skew the battle. So, tempering the spell makes sense to me. I think the range decrease is probably going to be fine. You attempt to spend one creature that you can see within range to another plane of existence. The target must succeed on a charisma saving throw or be transported to a harmless demiplane for the duration. The target can willingly fail the save. While in the demiplane, the target is incapacitated. At the end of each of its turns, the target can repeat the save, ending the spell on itself on a success. When the spell ends on the target, it reappears in the space it left or in the nearest unoccupied space if that space is occupied. So they've tempered it further by giving it the ability to, at the end of each of its turns, repeat the saving throw to end the spell early. I think that makes sense. That keeps it in line with a lot of other spells that would shut down creatures. With detrimental effects. But otherwise, it's incapacitated, it's off the battlefield, it's out of the fight for at least a round. Or not necessarily a round, but at least until the end of their next turn, which effectively takes them out of the fight for a round because they can't do anything since it's at the end of their turn anyway, even if they came back on the turn after the spell was cast on them. Let's see. If the spell lasts on the target for 1 minute and the target is an aberration, a celestial, an elemental, a fae, or a fiend, the target doesn't return. It is instead transported to a random location on a plane associated with its creature type. So that, I think, is still in line with how the base spell worked. Creatures not native to whatever plane you're on would be zapped back to wherever their home plane is, effectively. And when you cast at a higher level, you can target additional creatures for each spell slot above 4th. again, just like that. So I think they've tempered it down, effectively made the spell a little bit weaker. They've shortened its range. They've made it to where you can repeat the saving throw, which I'm just going to double check. Yeah, the original doesn't look like it has anything to repeat the saving throw. So they've made it to where they can repeat the saving throw on each of their turns, which tempers it further. But they've kept the fact that it zaps people away if you keep it on them for at least a minute and they're of a different type relating to a different plane of existence. So again, I think looking at these so far, it seems like the main changes they want to make is tempering the spells, bringing them in line, kind of weakening the potency of spellcasters a little bit, because at higher levels, spellcasters get wild. I don't think it's too crazy. I've played one game all the way to 20, and I've played others at high levels. So I've never seen the disparity really cause a problem between martial characters and casters. However, a lot of people voice issue with that disparity. So I understand them working to level the playing field a little bit. We're moving on to the Bark Skin spell, which I've pulled up here as well. Second level transmutation spell, the primal spell list. It's interesting that they're including a primal spell in a document that doesn't otherwise include a primal caster. It is a bonus action when it would normally be a full action. It is a touch spell, full material components still, and concentration up to an hour still. You touch one willing creature to protect it with regenerating bark. Until the spell ends, the target's skin assumes a bark-like appearance, and at the start of each of the target's turns, the target gains a number of temporary hit points equal to your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, you can target additional creatures for each spell slot, each spell level above 2nd. The original version of this worked quite a bit differently. It increased the target's AC to 16 unless it was already higher. So the way they word it is the target's AC can't be less than 16 regardless of what armor it's wearing. So effectively keeps their AC at 16 or higher. If someone is already higher than 16, you probably shouldn't be using the spell on them anyway. But for anyone with a lower AC, it can boost them up. This version, instead of bolstering them with boost to their AC, it bolsters them with temporary hit points. So again, that's another competitor for those temporary hit points with the new version of Aid. Again, keeping these spells tempered by having them compete a little bit. Of course, they are in different spell lists, so it makes sense to have variety across the different spell lists, the ability to do similar effects, even if there's already other spells that do similar effects. Let's see, moving on. Climb speed, creature type, d20 tests, we've seen all that stuff. Dash action, I think we've already seen that. Doesn't sound any different than we would expect. The dazed condition we briefly looked at earlier in the document when we were looking at the cleric. Makes it to where you can move or take one action on your turn, but not both, and you also can't take a bonus action or reaction. So being dazed severely limits what you're able to do on your turn. A pretty detrimental condition to have on you. So I'm looking forward to seeing more things working with conditions like this, be it spells or other class features for non-spellcasters. Difficult terrain, we already know how that works. Divine spells, same with the arcane spells, we're not going to look at it. Exhaustion, we read through this in the last one. It's very different from how exhaustion works in 5e. Instead of having multiple levels with different detriments on each level. It is a cumulative detriment up to 10, where you subtract the amount equal to your level from any d20 test you make, which is any roll of the d20 effectively. And it also subtracts it from your spell save DC, which means that even those spells are affected by exhaustion, making it fully effective against your character, and maintaining the fact that you die if your exhaustion exceeds the top level. Expertise, we saw that in the last one. It might be slightly different, but let's see. No, it doesn't look like anything is really different. At least nothing is standing out at a quick skim through it. So I think we'll skip over that. Fly speed, we understand. Grapple condition, we know. Guidance spell. Guidance spell. Okay, so the guidance spell showed up in the expert classes one. We actually already have it because we were talking about it earlier. So it's still a cantrip, a 0 level spell. Still primal and divine. Is a reaction when you take in response to you or an ally within 10 feet of you failing an ability check. Down from 30 feet, so they've made it even shorter range. You have to be pretty close to the person. So it's got a 10-foot range on it, same components, same duration. You channel magical insight into the creature who failed the ability check. The creature can roll a d4 and add the number rolled to the check, potentially turning it into a success. Haha, they did it! They got rid of the once per long rest effect of it, because turning into a reaction, especially limiting it by 10 feet, which I don't think that was necessary, but it's fine. But turning into a reaction already limited it enough. Making it only once per long rest was going too far and made it to where people weren't using the spell. So here I think is, maybe the range, maybe they could play with that still. But other than that, this is the upgrade that we want in a spell like this. Because now it's a reaction, so you don't have clerics and such every time someone makes a skill check saying, I'm going to give you guidance. I'm going to give that guy guidance. He's doing this, I'm going to give him guidance. I'm going to give me guidance. You only use it when you have to. So you don't have to deal with the guidance spam anymore. It's brilliant. Upgrade. Help action. I think we've probably already looked at this, but says the attack rolls, distract an enemy within 5 feet, giving advantage on the next attack roll against that enemy. And assist ability checks, specifically choosing one of your proficiencies, not any skill, just ones that you're proficient with. I think that is a good idea. And an ally you can who can see or hear you, you give advantage on the next ability check that an ally makes with the chosen skill. So they don't have to be proficient to make the skill check necessarily, but you have to be proficient to help with the skill check. And of course, they throw in the note, DM has final say on whether your assistance is possible. Heroic Inspiration, I believe we've gone over this. I think probably in the original character origins, that one probably came up. Effectively, we're just looking for spells and anything that stands out. Influence, I remember talking about that. I remember liking that. I'm pretty sure I liked that. I don't fully remember it. I would have to read through it again, but I remember it being something I talked about a lot. Interaction, ability check, invisible, condition, jump, light weapon property. Let's see. Let's look at this, because I don't remember this one coming up. When you take the attack action on your turn and attack with a light weapon in one hand and have a light weapon in the other hand, you can make one extra attack as part of the same action. I do remember reading about this one actually, because I remember the fact that they made it part of the same action instead of requiring a bonus action. Normally in 5e, if you use weapons with a light property, you would have to use a bonus action to use the second weapon instead of doing it as part of the same action. Again, that's an upgrade to what it is in normal 5e. I have an incredible guest who just showed up. My little guy, the cat Habibi, has decided to chill out and sit on my lap. So that is fun news for everybody, I'm sure, but mostly me. Long rests, interrupting rest, magic action, moves, special speeds, musical instruments, prayer of healing spell. Okay, that's another spell. So we're going to look at the original version of prayer of healing. Second level spell still, abjuration, as opposed to evocation. I think because they've been making a lot of the healing spells abjuration. Abjuration usually being the defensive, but also looks like they're turning it into the restorative field of magic in this case. It is a divine spell, takes 10 minutes to cast, has a range of 30 feet, verbal components, instantaneous duration, all in line with the original version. You utter an extended prayer of restoration. Choose a number of willing creatures equal to your spellcasting ability modifier with a minimum of 1. Each of those creatures who remains within range for the spell's entire casting gains the benefits of a short rest and also regains 2d8 hit points, and a creature can't be affected by this spell again until that creature finishes a long rest. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using a spell slot of 3rd level or higher, the healing increases by 1d8 for each slot above 2nd. Now, the way Prayer of Healing worked before is it wouldn't give the benefits of a short rest. It would just do the 2d8 hit points plus your ability modifier in healing. Having no effect on undead or constructs. Again, they're not including that wording in their spells in 1D&D, it looks like. And then it still had the increased healing for casting it at higher levels. So it's interesting that this is a spell that they didn't nerf. They buffed this spell by giving anyone who gets the benefits of the spell a short rest. That's pretty incredible. Wait, what? You have a cat? I do have a cat. He hangs out in the guild hall, and sometimes he shows up when I'm streaming. Unfortunately, I don't have a cat cam or anything, but you know, he is a good little guy. He does meow. He doesn't do it super frequently. Mostly, you know, just when he desperately needs attention. Otherwise, he's a pretty quiet guy. He's a very, very calm, very chill guy, which is, I think, the best kind of cat for me, because I like to think I'm a very chill person. But yeah, he is a he. His name is Habibi. And again, he is a good little guy. But yeah, so they didn't nerf this spell like they kind of did for some of the others. They buffed this spell. It's really interesting to see that. This sounds like a very potent spell. Not one that I ever saw people use very often because of the 10-minute casting time. People would usually find, you know, be more quick to just throw out a normal healing spell instead of doing the 10 minutes. I was curious about the priest's pack since they highlighted that. Maybe they just changed what's in it. That might be why they made a point about including it here, as opposed to just using what's in the player's handbook. Primal spells, we already know about those. Resistance is a spell that we're going to look at. So this is Divine and Primal, 0-level spell. It's a cantrip like it always was. It takes a reaction down from an action, which you take in response to you or an ally within 10 feet of you, failing a saving throw. So it sounds like they're giving it kind of the same treatment as Guidance. Instead of it being a spell that you have to preemptively cast, you use it as a reaction. So you're not potentially wasting spell slots or losing the benefit before it gets to get used because you lose concentration. It happens as a reaction when it's needed. It still has to be within 10 feet of you, similar to Guidance. That is more range than the original version, but the original version was also a preemptive spell, so being able to touch the target made a lot more sense for the original version than it does on this version. Let's look at the actual effect. You channel magical protection to the creature who failed the saving throw. That creature can roll a d4 and add the number rolled to the save, potentially turning into a success. So where Guidance helps you with skill checks, Resistance helps you with saving throws. Otherwise, they are nearly identical spells. Again, that's how Resistance already worked, except the fact that now it is a reaction, which I think is a huge upgrade. Turning preemptive spells into reactive spells like this, I think, is so much better. Not every spell should be reactive when they're normally preemptive. Some spells being preemptive makes sense, but these spells, I feel like this is an upgrade. Ritual casting, search action. Short sword is a simple weapon rather than a martial weapon. I think I remember seeing that before. Slowed condition we've seen before. Spiritual weapon. This is an exciting one because spiritual weapon is a very popular spell. You see clerics use it all the time. It's a bonus action, a 2nd level evocation spell of the divine spell list. Bonus action, 60-foot range, verbal and somatic components. I think they changed the word from somatic to something else, but I don't remember what they called it. Duration is concentration up to 1 minute. So it now has concentration, which means if an enemy hits you or otherwise causes you to lose concentration, there's a chance your spell ends early. In the original version, the spell would not be able to end early unless someone used something like Dispel Magic on it. And look at the effect. You create a flowing spectral force that resembles a weapon of your choice and that lasts for the duration. The force appears within range in a space of your choice, and you can immediately make one melee spell attack against a creature within 5 feet of the force. On a hit, the target takes force damage equal to 1d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier. As a bonus action on your later turns, you can move the force up to 20 feet and repeat the attack against a creature within 5 feet of it. When you cast it at higher levels, the damage increases by 1d8 for every slot level above 2nd. So the higher levels is the same. The using a bonus action to move and attack with it again on later actions is the same. The damage is the same. All of the function seems to be the same. The only change appears to be that it now requires concentration. I think that makes a lot of sense. This was an incredibly powerful spell normally because once you cast it, unless someone goes out of their way to to dispel magic on that effect, it would just keep going for a full minute, which a lot of times a full minute is going to be more than a full fight. Because 1 minute is 10 rounds in combat, and 10 rounds is, if a fight goes over 10 rounds, it is a very long fight usually. So this is surprising, and I think this is an upgrade. They're nerfing the spell, but I think it is for the best. Looking at more things we've seen, True Sight, I don't remember if they've mentioned before. But it looks like it clarifies some things. When you have True Sight, the creature can see in normal and magical darkness. The creature can see invisible creatures and objects. The creature notices visual illusions and automatically succeeds in saving throws against them. The creature discerns the true form of any creature or object it sees that has been transformed by magic. And the creature can see into the ethereal plane. So I'm pretty sure the original description of True Sight didn't clarify any of this. It just gave you roughly the idea of what it did, maybe gave you one or two examples, and just left you to it. In the original 2014 Player's Handbook and following books related to D&D 5e, they were very bad about clarifying things related to movement speeds and different senses like True Sight. And then we hit Unarmed Strike, which we've definitely already seen before. Again, I think it's an upgrade, throwing the Grapple and Shove into the Unarmed Strike, making it clear that those are things that you can do, and this is how you do them. And that is stuff that everyone can do. I do think I've seen other ways that are better to do things like Grapple and Shove. The one example that comes to mind is a third-party thing, a third-party publication called Level Up Advanced 5th Edition, which is based on D&D 5e, but it is it is a slightly more complex, only very slightly, but and more customizable and more in my opinion, a more well thought out take on D&D 5e. I would absolutely recommend it. I've played with it quite a bit. The one game that I'm in currently as a player, we are playing with Level Up Advanced 5th Edition. But as for how Wizards of the Coast is doing D&D 5e and One D&D, I think this is a good way of doing it. That is the end of the document, however. Effectively, the only thing we had to look at in the the last over half of the document was a few spells. Yeah, like 2/3 of the document, but we passed by most of it because we've seen most of it. And if you want to see my thoughts on those things, check out my review of the expert classes and of the character origins playtest materials. I have the VODs up on my YouTube channel, and you can check them out there. But yeah, in general, the main thing that comes to mind that I feel like One D&D isn't quite doing right, if we go back up to the Cleric, is the fact that you prepare spells, your prepared spells and your spell slots are tied together. So you can only prepare at, say, first level, you can only prepare 2 first level spells, 3 at level 2, 4 at any level afterwards, and that you're restricted to those arrangements of spell slots for prepared spells. I feel like that's a mistake. I feel like the way spell preparations worked prior to that in the 2014 Player's Handbook and subsequent releases for D&D 5e, I think the way prepared spells worked there was fine and good. I don't think they needed to change it. That's the only thing I really have to say stands out as something they've done poorly. The rest, so far, the playtests are looking pretty good. I know not everyone shares my opinion, but if they did, me streaming this would not have any point. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the Cleric and Revised Species playtest materials for One D&D. It's a bit of an unusual time, but I think we're going to go ahead and call the stream there for the night. I am going to continue to do these reviews and discussions. Always open to for anyone who plays D&D and is familiar with content, or otherwise when I'm doing these these streams rather. I'm always open to people jumping into the chat and talking with me about it. I do like having some discussion. And again, in the new year, I'm looking to do more D&D based content on stream. I made the bold proclamation that I would try to do at least one shot or something of the sort every month moving forward on stream. I may try to start a long-term ongoing campaign. That remains to be seen, however, as scheduling for that sort of thing can be very difficult. Otherwise, if you want to check out my previous little 2-part one-shot, Rebirth of the Jackdaw, you can check that out on my YouTube channel. I have a playlist set up for it and everything. And if you want to check out my previous One D&D playtest reviews and discussions, you can check that out there as well. I should have a playlist set up for those videos as well. I've had incredible number of people popping in and following and chatting, and I really appreciate that. So everyone who has stopped by, everyone who has been chatting with me, anyone who's been lurking, anyone who is checking out the VODs after the fact, thank you guys, and I appreciate you guys, absolutely. And I look forward to seeing you guys again in the future. I see here in the chat, Cookie, it looks like you're in the middle of a question, so I'll let you finish before we wrap up here. Am I what? Not sure if you'll be there next stream. Well, the next stream I'm doing is tomorrow, same time that I started this stream. If you can't make it, no worries. I will be jumping into Alan Wake tomorrow to start that game and play it through. Of course, as with any of my streams, you can, if you can't make it for the stream, no worries, because you can always check out my VODs after the fact on YouTube. I've been pretty bad about uploading them regularly as I stream. I've already got a backlog, I think, of three past streams I still have to upload. But you know, if you can't make it, no worries. Come by when you can, and you appreciate it all the same. Or check out the VODs. I appreciate having you guys over there as well. Again, you can check that out on YouTube. So, no worries. But yeah, tomorrow's Alan Wake stream is all I've got left for the week. And then probably Sunday or Monday, I will put out a new schedule for the week then. And then we'll go from there. I don't believe I had anything scheduled for Sunday. I usually don't. I think tomorrow is my last stream for the week. It certainly is. Okay. Yep. Tomorrow, Alan Wake, 6 p.m. CST, CDT, as necessary. So, yeah, go ahead and check those out if you want. We will see you guys next time. And as always, have a good one. Oh, actually, you know what? So I'm really bad about remembering this, but you know, we could pop in and raid one of our good buddies who is streaming. Let's see. Let me briefly see who's on real quick, and then we'll see about tossing you guys over to those guys. If Twitch will hurry up and load for me. There we go. You know what? It looks like our buddy from Project Hivecore is streaming some Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I'm not sure which one in particular she's playing, but let's go pop on over there and say hello. So yeah, again, everyone, we'll see you there and have a good one. I always forget the like 10-second countdown before we can actually go. There we go.